The last 3 seasons, it really what stands out is when they were together, this duo in 2017 and 2018, the health and the optimism, an all-time high. Look at the minutes there on the right side. And then you see the numbers dramatically drop from 2 years into 2019, 2020, that net efficiency, and just 840 minutes on the court together. Ashley?
All right, we're now joined by Adrian Wojnarowski. He broke this news, and he's on the phone joining us now. Adrian, tell us about why this was the best fit and how this came together so quickly.
Ashley, once Doc Rivers parted ways with the Clippers on Monday, Philadelphia's general manager, Elton Brand, very quickly got in touch with Rivers, with his agent, Lonnie Cooper, and he and Doc Rivers had an initial conversation and decided that it would be worth it for him to fly across country, come in to Philly, meet with Brand again, and then sit down with the Sixers ownership, Josh Harris, David Blitzer, and they did that last night in Philadelphia. And when they finished up last night, they were all ready to move toward negotiating a deal, and they got a contract done here late in the afternoon. Mike D'Antoni, in a lot of ways, was teed up and in position to become the Sixers' next coach. But once Doc Rivers became available, they decided that this was a coach who they weren't going to pass on. And for Philadelphia now, they returned Doc Rivers to the Eastern Conference, to a rival of the Boston Celtics, where obviously he won his NBA championship as a coach.
What do the Philadelphia 76ers believe that Doc can do with this talented roster, headlined, of course, by Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons?
Well, this is a Sixer team that wants to continue to tweak the pieces around Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And remember, Tobias Harris is a tremendous investment for this Sixer organization. They ultimately decided to give Tobias Harris a long-term deal, and Jimmy Butler went on in a sign and trade to Miami. And remember, Tobias Harris had his best year in the NBA or his best season until a trade to Philly 2 years ago with Doc Rivers in LA. I know he was a big part of the conversation that they had about how to unlock Harris, get the most out of him, and certainly he's a big part of it. But I think for this Philadelphia team, it's whoever's coaching the team, and now Doc Rivers, the ability to find the best way to maximize both Embiid and Ben Simmons. Elton Brand, the GM, has continued to insist that he's determined to keep building around those two players. And now, after Brett Brown leaves, here comes Doc Rivers to try to maximize those two and get the Sixers to advance deeper here again in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
And we know that Philly had options. They were considering Mike D'Antoni as well as Tyronn Lue. So what was it about Doc Rivers that made them hire him as head coach?
Well, listen, Doc Rivers for Philadelphia was, I think, his presence, his stature in the league. They really like Mike D'Antoni. And again, they were, if Doc Rivers is still coaching the Clippers, I think Mike D'Antoni is the Sixers head coach. But I think for Philadelphia, having really to have a face of the organization in that coaching position, Doc, listen, he transcends the position. He is a larger voice, especially in a city like Philadelphia. Basketball is important there. It is part of the fabric of that city. And to have Doc Rivers as the face of that organization as a head coach was something that really appealed to Brand and to ownership.
All right, Woj, thank you so much for joining us. Woj, breaking the news that Doc Rivers is the new head coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. Kevin?
That Rivers has agreed to be the next head coach of the Sixers team that failed to meet expectations entering the season. Rivers beating out Mike D'Antoni and Clippers assistant Ty Lue on that short coaching list. And we will have more from Adrian Wojnarowski as SportsCenter continues. He's been all over this story. In the meantime, let's bring in NBA champ Richard Jefferson. And Richard, let's talk a little bit about the credentials here that Doc Rivers brings to this organization. He has won titles. He has dealt with big personalities, especially when you look at the big three in Boston, what he did with Pierce and Allen, of course, Kevin Garnett, and then most recently with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. The expectations were much higher with the Clippers. He failed to meet those. What do you look at this fit here with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons in Philly and now Doc Rivers, the head coach?
Well, let me first say that the expectations in Los Angeles weren't met after 1 year, but he was very instrumental in bringing Kawhi and bringing Paul George. And that's what's going to lead us to Philly. Ultimately, when you give him the Philadelphia 76ers, they're going to start building something that everyone believes has an opportunity to be special. But Doc Rivers, high level ability isn't just his ability to coach stars, but it's also his ability to recruit stars and bring people in and have the ability to buy in. I really believe that if he was given a little bit more time in Los Angeles, he would have delivered on that promise. But ultimately, he has a chance to do it with two very, very good superstars in Philadelphia.
RJ, you know about big personalities. You've played with them throughout your career, most specifically winning a title in Cleveland with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving here. I'm not putting Embiid and Simmons on that level just yet. I'm just saying, how would you handle if you're Doc Rivers coming into this situation? They have yet to win together as a team.
Well, I think that everything takes time and takes years. One thing I will say is that this team this year for the 76ers was not even close. They didn't have the shooters. They didn't have Bellinelli. They didn't have Ilyasova. They didn't have J.J. Redick. They didn't have Jimmy Butler. So to look at this Philadelphia 76er team and say that this was even remotely close to what they had in prior teams, I think they really need to start building out this roster around their two best player strengths. And that means that they need shooting, and they need a lot of it.
Okay, it's hard to find shooters around the league. And one thing they do have is also, and it's not a big three, but they have Tobias Harris. They gave him the max deal. They brought him in, of course, from the Clippers in a trade. They also have Al Horford. With that, the four ingredients here, can you keep these four together with this team with Doc Rivers and produce a winner in the East?
Well, I think you want to give them time. Understand that a lot of Tobias Harris' max contract thought that he had a chance to be an all-star that year because he was leading that very, very young Clipper team. So hopefully Doc Rivers can get that portion out of Tobias Harris. There is no doubt about his talent. There's no doubt about his ability. But can he take that next step and be a game finisher like Jimmy Butler was and also be a guy that can shoot at a very, very high level? That's what they need from him. But they have plenty of talent. They have the pieces, but they're still going to need more pieces to turn this team into a championship level team.
And RJ, this is a fascinating story with the dominoes here because Ty Lue was one of the names considered for this job from the start when Brett Brown was fired. Now Ty Lue was the assistant under Doc Rivers, and now we have an opening in L.A. What does this now mean for the Clippers and a guy like Ty Lue or even Mike D'Antoni, who was one of those guys on this coaching search for the Sixers?
Well, when Mike D'Antoni's name was brought up in Philadelphia, I was very, very confused. Nothing about Mike D'Antoni's time in this league said that he would work well with Ben Simmons, who wasn't a shooter, or Joel Embiid, who is really a natural big. And so I was really confused about that. I think the Clippers could be, a good look for him. But ultimately, I think Ty Lue and the way he has the ability to also talk to stars and also recruit players to come play in L.A., I think that would be a very, very key pickup for the Los Angeles Clippers if they were to able to get a guy like Tyronn Lue.
Okay, big off day here in the NBA Finals. You're from the bubble in Orlando, RJ, with the very latest with his thoughts on the Sixers deciding to go with Doc Rivers. Let's go to Ashley. Oh, wait, you know what? Actually, here's some more information.